Hello, Dan, and thank you for inviting me to Discover Truth program. As you can see on the slide, my name is Mirek Kuzdia. Originally, I come from Poland, and I'm a registered member of British Association for Counselling Psychotherapy. I've worked for 10 years with people who have substance misuse problem. I myself am an adult child of alcoholics, so I grew up in an alcoholic family with a sadomasochistic brother. So I've seen quite a lot of violence and abuse. Currently I'm working with victims of sexual trauma and sexual abuse. So I'd like to present to you today a topic of addiction. And I hope it won't be boring because my intention is not to present the topic from the scientific point of view. There will be one or two slides about it, but I would like to talk more about psychological aspect of it and spiritual aspect of it. So if I may upfront apologize for my English. If I make any mistakes, please do accept my apology, because English is my second language, so obviously it's not perfect. Okay, so let's take a look first at the drug categories, and it will be just one or two slides. So as you can see on the slide here, we have four main categories of drugs. So we have stimulants, antipsychotics, depressants, and hallucinogens. And as you can see, they overlap and they have different, impact on the brain of the person who is taking it and the body. So there's plenty of material out there on the internet, and I think it would be just a waste of time for me to talk about this, because you can find it for yourselves, quite a lot of material. I also have a website which covers quite a lot about addiction and codependency. If you choose to go there and just search for yourself, it's called www.counselinginsouthampton.com. So you feel welcome to research something if you want. So as you can see, there's plenty to choose from, and many people, for various reasons, will be seeking drug use. But I will go to this in a minute. So let's move on. So the second kind of part of this presentation is why people really get addicted. Okay. Now, we can see there are several reasons. So I will just briefly go through them. I don't want to stay here for too long. But the first reason is the medical reason. So sometimes people go to hospitals and they have some surgical operations and they are given some very powerful painkillers. And you can see the medications there. And some people develop dependency on such medication if they are taking the medication for too long. Also, comorbidity contributes into physical dependence and psychological dependence on prescribed medication, and not only, but if people suffer from more than one illness, it could contribute to the higher risk of developing addiction. Now, second reason is biological or genetical. I won't go to too many details with this, but it's really, really interesting stuff. I mean, there's a book called, hold on, what's the title of the book? I can't remember, but the author is Joanne Matthews Larson. And it's an interesting story because her own son, at the age of 16, was already heavily dependent on alcohol. And basically he committed suicide. And she was so shocked by the fact that in the morning he kissed her on her cheek when she was in a bed and said, "Mom, I've got good results from college. Everything is going to be fine." And on lunchtime with her younger son, they were in the kitchen and heard some sound in the garage behind the wall. They went to the garage and found the son dead under the exhaust pipe. So basically she was so shaken by the situation that she started studying more about addiction. She did her PhD, and eventually developed this kind of model which says that there are 3 alcoholic biotypes. And you might have noticed, because obviously I have noticed, I grew up in an alcoholic family, but you have different types of alcoholics, apparently. Those who have some experience with people who abuse alcohol can probably agree with me. Some people, when they get drunk, they will be quite, well, I would say, upset and feeling sorry for themselves, and they may cry, they could go straight to bed, and they will be kind of like getting out of the way of other people. Others will be very violent. They will look for fight. And others, they will have such, we call it a strong head. So everybody's under the table and they are still sitting at the table and asking for more. So as you can see, each of these types will represent different alcoholic biotype. And the first alcoholic biotype, which is ADH/THIQ, stands for acetaldehyde, which is so when the body breaks down alcohol in the liver, the first substance that is actually a product of the breakdown is acetaldehyde, and it's highly toxic substance. It's very dangerous substance. So the body has to quickly do something about it. And when there is a genetic fault on that level, the acetaldehyde won't be broken down into acidic acid, but there will be a waste product. And the waste product is called tetrahydroisoquinoline. And tetrahydroisoquinoline is an opioid-like substance. And there was really interesting situation that happened in America. I think it was in Texas, where a scientist who was, it was 1970s, so the ethics were some quite different. She was actually joining the police patrols in their cars and patrolling the streets at night, looking for, basically dead alcoholics, homeless people who died in the streets. And then she would take them and study their brains. And one day she was surprised by something. She found opioid-like substance. So she spoke with the ambulance crew who knew this person very well. And he said, I didn't know that he was a drug addict. And basically they laughed at her and they said, no way, he was just an alcoholic. So then she said, so why I found opioid substance in his brain? And it turned to be that it was this tetrahydroquinoline that is actually a waste product of alcohol breakdown in the system. And this type of alcoholics will be the type who has very strong head, and they can drink loads of alcohol at first, but then the AA saying applies to them. Once the chalice has received the last drop and overflow, they become highly addicted to substance, to alcohol. And then they say, one is never enough and 1,000, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. Because they can't stop. Once they started drinking, they can't stop. They will binge for a week, 2, 3, for months. So this is the kind of first alcoholic biotype. The second alcoholic biotype is allergic biotype, which means that our body, so let's say alcohol is produced from different products. So we have hemp, we have grains, we have potato that is used for production of alcohol. And that means that there will be different carbohydrates. So different drinks, different brands of alcohol, wine and other kind of alcohol brands will have different carbohydrates. And I've had clients who would say, I could drink 2 1.5 liter bottles of cider a day and I was fine, but give me a glass of scotch and I become a beast. And the reason why it's like this is because there is allergic reaction of the body to this particular carbohydrates. So this person must have been drinking and preferring one type of alcoholic brand, and the body developed allergic reaction to it. So, like for example, people with high fever, they become quite irritated and quite easily triggered when they have this season of hay fever. So same here is with the allergic reaction to carbohydrates that are contained in the alcohol. And these people will be violent. They will be looking for fight when they get drunk. And that was the type of my sadomasochistic brother. So the third type is the omega-6 essential fatty acids deficient alcoholic chemistry, meaning that there is a deficiency of omega-6 essential fatty acids in the body, and this person has the tendency to feel depressed. I mean, alcohol is depressant anyway, but they will feel more depressed, and they will be very low in mood and tearful and crying, feeling sorry for themselves and going to bed. So as you can see, there are different types, and people behave differently under the influence of alcohol. Okay, a third reason for developing addiction is psychological reasons, and it could be childhood, physical, sexual, emotional trauma, could be abandonment issues, could be long-term loss and grief issue. I've had a client in the past who lost her child, who drowned in a swimming pool whilst she was sitting and drinking her wine in the house, and she could never stop drinking because she had a wrong concept of bereavement, and basically she thought that if she had dealt with the issues of alcoholism, she would have lost the connection with her daughter. So she kept drinking because then she felt sorry for the loss. So there are various issues. Another one is mood altering substance becomes a medication for emotional immaturity problems. So people, as we know, it's called mood altering substances. So either drugs or alcohol or other medications, they regulate the way how people feel. It regulates their mood, meaning they are mood altering substances, and it becomes their medication. It becomes their crutch. They can't function without it. And the last one is social issues. And as you can see in brackets, I've put rat spark. Now, I want to talk to you about two experiments that were conducted. One was conducted, I think, if I believe it was in 1950s. And it was about having a rat in a little cage or a box. Let's call it a pen. So the rat was given two types of water. One water was normal water, and another water was drugged water with cocaine. And the scientists discovered that the rat very quickly developed addiction and dependency on the drugged water. So their assumption was, okay, so the substance makes you addicted. And then about 50 years later, I think it was after year 2000, another scientist thought about this experiment, and they thought, this is not right. This experiment is not valid. Why? Because the rat had nothing to do as only to drink the water. So the experiment was biased. So what they created then was this. They put loads of rats, males and females, into the same pen. They created a rat spark. There was loads of spinning wheels, tunnels, different kind of, activities available for the rats. They could mate, they could eat well. So there was happy life created for the rats. And then they provided the normal water and the drugged water. And hardly, only a few of the rats got addicted and hooked on the drugged water. So the scientists came up with this sort of conclusion. Hold on, let me move this up. So they came up with the conclusion. In the first experiment, original experiment, the conclusion was chemistry of drugs is the single most important factor in addiction. But then the second experiment sort of proved, no, actually addiction isn't you, it's the cage you live in. So what they actually try to say is the epigenetics, is the environment that actually makes you want to take the drugs. If you live in poor environment, if you are deprived or of some activities and some meaning in life, then obviously you will look for quick fix. And then you take drugs and you feel instantly better. But my opinion is neither of them on its own is right. Actually, it's the both that actually contribute to addiction development problem. So we can't separate them and say one or the other. It's actually both of them that contribute to the addiction problem. So as you can see in 2015, Johann Hari published Chasing the Scream, the first and last days of the war on drugs. And Hari asserted that the disconnection that arises from a poor environment creates addiction. Simply put, a lack of human connection significantly increases the chance of addiction. Now, I want to show you something now that two quotations, I believe, if I'm correct. Oh, no, it will be later. So this one, okay, let me tell you the story. It's a fictional story of Mr. Smith. So allow me to introduce Mr. Smith to you. Mr. Smith he is in his 30s now, but we'll come back to him later when he's younger. So he's in his 30s and he has family. He has a job. He has some religious beliefs which are important to him, and his hobby is to travel around the world. So that's his world, and the circle actually includes something that is meaningful in his life. Basically, it gives him a sense for existence. And now he's going through some crisis time and he's struggling to cope. And one of his friends is saying, why don't you have a drink? So he introduces an alcohol as a solution. And as time goes by, he's developing more and more dependency on alcohol. Why? Because alcohol is actually doing a good job for him at the moment. It's giving him confidence. It's actually helping him not to feel the pain. Is helping him to feel better. So at the moment, it's the medication he's found as very helpful and useful. And it becomes more and more important in his life. And what I say to my clients, I don't know how many of you are aware of insecure attachment styles, but it's really interesting to notice that we have 4 insecure attachment styles and just 1 secure attachment style. So insecure attachment styles are anxious avoidant, anxious ambivalent, anxious disorganized, and anxious disorganized ambivalent. Now, I will mention this now because I want to bring it up in a second. When he gets to the stage where he's developing dependency on the substance, because sooner or later it will happen. So what is dependency? Dependency happens when, in order for me to achieve the same outcome, feeling good, feeling relaxed, feeling confident, I need to now increase the dose of the substance I'm using because the lower dose I used to use doesn't work anymore. So my body is adapting, is actually trying to fight it back. I won't be going into medical reasons how it works, but basically the body is trying to cope with the substance we are taking in and, well, get rid of it. It's a poison. So now we have to increase the level of the substance we are taking in order to get the same effect. And that will create certain problems. So he's becoming more and more and more attached to the need of having such substance in his life. So I'd like to ask you to envision something here. Imagine this. It's 11 a.m. and Mr. Smith is still at work, but his thoughts are already going towards 5 p.m. when he will hit the clock on the wall and he will be on his way back home. Because on his way back home, he will pop into the local corner shop to get his, well, beer or wine or vodka. So he can't wait. It's already 11 a.m. and he's already thinking about the time when he will be leaving his workplace. So as you can see, it becomes more and more obsessive. The alcohol is occupying more and more of his life. Even when he's in different places, he's still thinking of having alcohol because he's more and more dependent on it. And that means, trying to envision it, imagine that I've attached a string with one end of it to the neck of the bottle. And then I've attached to the end of the bottle, the end of the string, the other end, a pen. And because his head is constantly spinning around the thought of having alcohol, we start spinning the string with the pen at the end of it. What is going to happen? As we go round, the string gets shorter and shorter and shorter because it's getting wrapped around the neck of the bottle. And the circle will be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's what's going to happen now. I show you. As you can see, his family is out of the equation. His hobby is out of the equation. His religious life is out of the equation because God is something that it doesn't go along really with his addiction. And his job is out of equation. So now he's stuck in the bottle. And he looks at the world through the glass, and the glass is distorted. So what he sees through the glass of the bottle will also be distorted. And we say in our professional kind of environment that people who have addiction problem live in their bubble. And it's very true, because the reality of people with addiction problem is very different from your reality. That's why they will take, well, precious things of you, even like, I don't know, jewelry of your family, and they sell it for free or for little money, just basically to get a drug or to get an alcohol. They will do anything. They will lie, they will manipulate, they will blackmail you. They will do anything to get what they need. Why? Because this is the only thing they have left. So try to take it away from them. And when we talk about recovery, I usually say that a part of the recovery is to bring back again what they've lost. Why? Because if they only have one thing left, and it's the bottle, so to speak, metaphorically, now try to take it away from them. I'm saying you, after your dead body, man, it happens, because that's the only thing they've got left, and you are trying to take it away from them. They will not allow you to. And this is why you can see now why it's so difficult to actually convince someone who has addiction problem to stop it, because they will defend it, they will fight for it. So when we are actually working therapeutically with clients, we are trying to introduce the other elements so they can have something more than just the bottle. So even if they've lost something now, let's say, I don't know, a job, but they still have their religious beliefs and values, they still have their hobby, they still have their family. So it's much easier then to actually overcome these difficult times and crises when you have other things in your life because you feel more motivated. You feel that there is a meaning still in your life. But when you have only a bottle, you will defend it. So that's the kind of way of introducing other resources into the addicted person's life so they can find meaning again, and the circle can expand and these things can be included again. Please allow me to quote two people here. Dorothy Rowe, she wrote 4 books, I've got them, and in one of them about siblings, she wrote the following: we live to make a meaning, and we make a meaning in life in order to feel alive. To step out of the meaning is to die. So the moment I lose a meaning for me being here, what's the next question is going to pop into my head? So I'm still here. What's the purpose for me to be here? So without meaning, we have meaningless life. And meaningless life is just nothing. So to step out of the meaning is to die. Now, this statement, some people might struggle with. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Well, you can't see who said it, but it was Viktor Frankl. I don't know how many of you know who Viktor Frankl was, but he was a psychotherapist who, unfortunately for him, lived during the Second World War time, and he was of Austrian Jewish origin. So all his family members died in concentration camps, and he himself was actually sent to 4 concentration camps, including Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. And he was watching people whilst he was there. He was watching the guards and he was watching the prisoners. And he noticed something, that there were some prisoners who were doing better and some who were not doing so well. And basically, those who were even doing better or had better conditions, they would die. And those who had horrible conditions would still, well, keep fighting for their life. And it made him wonder, what's the reason? What's the difference? So he came to this understanding that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And this is the person who was in concentration camp who said that. So we have to actually respect that, because he went to the lowest of the lowest, and still he was able to actually make such a statement. So he wrote a very interesting book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl. I highly recommend to read the book. It's not too big. Okay, so let's move on to spiritual origins of addiction. Now, before we actually go into biblical texts and Bible, I'd like to introduce quickly something to you. So please bear with me. There are 2 types of communication we use whilst interacting with people. This will be the psychological reasons why people develop addiction and why addiction is so addictive. So there are 2 types of communication we use whilst interacting with people. So as you can see, the equations are pretty much the same, but they are not. And I will show to you in a minute that what we consider to be safe is actually quite dangerous, and what we consider to be dangerous is actually quite safe. So just hold on. So the first equation stands for head-to-head talking with people, which involves using a logic. And the second type of communication with people is heart-to-heart. And when we think about it, head-to-head seems to be more safe, because we talk about weather, we talk about other things like science and something else, and it doesn't involve our feelings. But when we start talking about feelings, oops, there might be a problem. I could actually show someone that I'm vulnerable, or I'm afraid, or I'm upset. And then they could actually use it against me one day. So it's better not to talk about feelings. Just use your head. Let's look at it. Now, also, apart from two ways of communication, the brain will have to process three different types of information. So you have to answer this question to yourself, because I will ask true or false, but I think the answers will be pretty straightforward. So the first statement, and I'd like you to decide if you agree or disagree with this statement, is this: eating humans' flesh is enjoyable and healthy. Is it true or false? Obviously, I can't hear you, but I assume that most of people would say, well, this is false. No, thank you very much, but I would not rather have it. But the question is then, okay, let's go for the second one. So the second one is, eating healthy food and living healthy lifestyle could prolong your life, true or false? And most of us, I guess, would agree with it, because, you know, if you look after yourself and you eat healthy food and you have a good lifestyle, you could live longer. So most of us will say true. But then the question is, based on what? It took us a split of second to say true or false, because it didn't take long for us to decide. So there are three factors. Number one is the easily accessible general knowledge we have access to. Secondly, it will be your background. And third one could be your spiritual beliefs. Because with the first statement, eating humans' flesh is enjoyable and healthy, if I said it to a cannibal, he would ask me, what's the time for lunch? When are we serving lunch then? So he would be very happy to actually hear that news. Obviously, I'm joking. But the point is, depending on who you say it to, their reaction will be different. So as you can see, we will be making our own decision based on what we know and what we believe is true. Now, there is a third type of information that will create some problem. And it kind of goes like this. Your friend yesterday did it. So if I asked you true or false, what would you say? And I assume that you would be thinking and thinking and thinking and saying, hold on. Okay, my friend, but question is, who is that? Which friend? I don't know, a female friend or male friend, or young friend or old friend? Who do you mean? Then yesterday, okay, yesterday, but what time and where? And did what and why? So too many questions. We cannot process it properly to give the definite answer, true or false. So as you know now, our brain doesn't like uncertainty, doesn't like lack of clarity, and it will sit with you in the brain. So the brain will now start working really hard to come up with some sort of answer. So we will think, yesterday, okay, and something happened yesterday. Who might it have been that actually was yesterday involved in something? So we will eventually find someone and say, oh, then it must have been this person. But that's just assumption. But the brain cannot put to rest the very thought, the very information, unless we find a logical explanation for it. And this is very important, because that's how you create Chinese whispers. Now, why I'm saying this? Because I want to introduce something to you now. So as you can see, the first message was easy to understand and it was rejected. The second message was easy to understand and it was accepted. The third message was confusing, which leads to making us feeling unsure. Now, I'm bringing Mr. Smith back into our conversation. And Mr. Smith, as you already know, has the family and has friends. And also there is something else on this picture. Mr. Smith has an image of himself, of someone who he is not, but he wishes he could become one day. So how does it work? Let's assume I'm a talkative guy. You can't stop me. I could talk for Russia, for England, for Ireland and Poland and Germany altogether, and you won't stop me. Now, Mr. Smith is an introvert, and he is a very shy guy. He doesn't do well in crowds. So Mr. Smith is envisioning himself and dreaming of being the man of the party. I wish I could be like some people. They just walk into the crowd and start telling jokes, and everybody just laughs. So the image we usually have about ourselves is the opposite image to what we think we are. And to be honest, there is nothing wrong with it, because otherwise, how could we develop and grow? But there are two ways of achieving it. One way is, well, I see someone who is doing better and I basically, play unfair, and they lose their position or they lose something I want to have, and then I've got it. Or I think, well, I wonder how much he had to study to actually get this job, so maybe I should study too. But that takes longer and it requires more of effort. So some people go for shortcuts and egoistically, they actually do something bad to the person to get their job. So as you can see, there are two ways of achieving the image I wish I could become this person one day. It's the quick fix, or it's the long-term process of working on myself so I eventually can get there. Now, this picture explains how people sometimes use the third type of message, which is the fragmented message, the one that created confusion. So what people do, and this is why what seems to be safe actually becomes dangerous. Let me explain, please. Mr. Smith is actually having this idea. If I only share with my family members and my friends the information about me, only the information that I want them to know about me, so who is in control? I am in control, because I will be telling them only what I want them to know. So they will not know these parts of me and about me that I feel ashamed of. So I will be telling them how great I am, and that will create, as you can see, the yellow arrows, the information he's sending, which is fragmented information, not actually complete information. He's selective about what he's telling them. This selected information will create the image of him, of someone who he is not, but he wants them to think that he is this person. So that reminds me of Pharisees, of hypocrites, of people who play games, of narcissists, of psychopaths, who are actually sending fragmented messages to other people, creating the image of themselves who they are not, but they want other people to believe that they are this person. So this creates some risk, because how many times you can lie until people find out? And this also leads to another problem. He becomes dependent on the opinion of other people about himself. So he becomes a people pleaser. Because as long as they are saying something nice about him, he feels good. But when they say something negative about him, he is crushed. So he will try to keep the image of himself as a good guy, the not existing one, but that requires of him to actually please them, do what they want, have their needs met, and he has no life. because they live their lives in his life. So everything comes with price. But I'm just building something on here that I will show you in a second. So as you can see, okay, let me move this up because we can't read. As you can see, using this honest way of communication may lead to people-pleasing problem and eventually codependency. And the 1 Corinthians 7:23 says, you were bought at a price, do not become slaves of men. But in this case, eventually he will become a slave of man because he will be dependent on their opinion about himself. So this can contribute to development of addiction because there will be not just the physiological dependency, it will be the psychological dependency. Because, for example, I will show you in a minute. So let's read the verse from the Bible. Matthew 23, woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites, you are like the whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. So this is exactly that. We've created an image of us who we are not, but other people believe that we are this person. Now, this is the way, head-to-head way of communication. So if I can just go quickly back. Sorry, just quickly. Oh, there we go. If I can quickly go back and tell you this. So this is the head-to-head way of communication. I will use my logic to create an image of someone who I am not. But why then the heart-to-heart way is less risky? Because when we talk about our feelings, yes, obviously, you have to decide for yourself how far it's safe for you to go and disclose something on emotional level. But at the same time, when you are communicating on feelings level, actually, you are creating an image of the real you. And if you are in crisis, people will not think, hold on, we thought that he was like this. Why is he behaving that way? And so please do tell me, what kind of friends he will have? The type of friends who will believe that he is the guy in this yellow kind of cloud, okay? Now, when something goes wrong and they think that he was false, he loses all the friends. He has nobody because he's created the false image of himself and they became friends with the false image. But when we talk on feelings level, we are actually creating the image of who we truly are. And if you are in crisis, your friends will be with you because they've known you like this for years. There is no surprise who you are to them. So that's why talking on feelings level is safer, but you have to be careful how much you disclose. Now, please do allow me to quickly introduce this also, because I'm gonna show you, hopefully you will find it interesting. So let's introduce Mr. Smith in a minute again. I have only a few minutes left. Now, we have the process of developing addiction. Now, we have three categories of emotions, so-called normal emotions in the middle, unpleasant emotions on the left, and pleasant emotions on the right. Pleasant emotions will end up in euphoria. Unpleasant emotions can end up in depression and death. Now, someone is in the middle. And imagine that Mr. Smith now is 16 years of age. He's a young lad, very insecure, very lacking confidence, not really crowd people type person, but he wishes to be this type. So at age of 16, he has his friends and they say to him, well, let's go to party. So when he walks into the flat, 15 people in there, and he's feeling, my goodness, you know, I feel cramped. I feel very uneasy here. So he wants to go back, but they push him further in. So he finds a chair and sits on the chair and watches people. They dance, they laugh, they have fun, and he's just tense and scared. And suddenly he spots the table in the corner. Some food, some drinks. He has 3 shots. First time in his life. And it's magic. Because after these first 3 shots, he is suddenly moved into this pleasant area of emotions. And he is easygoing, confident, and he walks into the crowd and starts telling jokes, and people can't stop laughing. And he thinks, I found a magic cure. It's like a magic wand. Just had 3 shots and I'm a completely different person. This person, as you can see, in the bubble. Finally, he's the one he's always wanted to be. He found his cure. So, because it was just few drinks, the next morning he wakes up, no problem, no side effects, he's feeling great. So he continues going to parties. For the next 6 months, he's just partying. But obviously, this is taking its toll on him. So he's developing some dependency now. And that means that when he's sober, he's actually waking up in the unpleasant emotions area. He's feeling like headache, sick, and he can't remember what happened last night. And he's feeling horrible. He's feeling really low about himself. So what's the magic cure? Well, I need few shots. But then, because the tolerance has increased, in order to be in the same place as he was before, he needs to now drink 16 units of alcohol. And the units have the purpose, because 1 unit means that your liver will have to work very hard for 1 hour to actually get rid of alcohol out of your system. So 16 units means that his liver will have to work for 16 hours to get out of it, the alcohol. So as you can see, there is a build-up. And it will be harder and harder for him to stay sober. So now he's functioning between these 2 areas. Either when he's sober, he feels like crap, but when he's under influence, he's godlike. He can do anything. He's invincible. What? I can't do? Watch me then. So as you can see, he's starting to live in 2 different worlds, and the sober world becomes painful. The drunk world becomes more enjoyable. So you guess what he will be choosing? Obviously, he will want to be under the influence. But by doing so, he's creating in the middle emotional void. I mean, it's not just emotional, it's functional. So for example, now because he's heavily dependent on alcohol, the times when he was able to drink and wash his clothes, clean his house, do the washing up, do the shopping, go to work, is long gone. I've had clients in the hospital, who lost toes at their feet, and they had to be amputated because back in Poland, he fell into the ditch on the side of the road and slept there all night in January with minus 20 degrees. So when he woke up, his toes were gone. The very same person, the medical personnel students came to me with an iPad, and because they needed a translator, and they said to me, can we take a photo of his bum? I said, excuse me? They said, we want to take a photo of his bum. I said, do you want me to translate it to him? Yeah. Tell him we want to take a photo of his bum. Okay. So he said, all right. And he pulled the trousers down. And do you know what I saw? Well, he left. Before he went to the hospital, he laid down in the bed for 7 days, drinking and wetting himself and pooing into the bed to the point where he lost the skin on his bum. So as you can see, there is an emotional void and functional void. He's not able any longer to function normally. It's either this or that. And it means there will be an emotional seesaw. I'm either nobody, I'm a piece of crap, or I'm godlike. I can do anything. I'm invincible. And that's why they live in their own bubble. So as you can see now, we have this emotional seesaw. I'm a waste of space, or I'm invincible. And eventually, the last stage of drinking is you drink to suffer less, because the joy is long gone. You're just minimizing the pain you're in, or you drink to feel normal. Okay, and eventually there is a crisis point. We call it hitting the rock bottom. So I think I won't have the time to present to you the topic of unhealthy recovery, so I have to skip it, sorry. But this is a very interesting statement. People change when the point of inactivity outweighs the point of activity. So in other words, it means we will make a change when it's better to make a change, because being in the place where I'm in is basically anything that, sorry, let me rephrase it. People make a change when the point of inactivity outweighs the point of activity, meaning it's better to do anything than nothing. So they will do anything to get out of the place. And this is the hitting rock bottom place, when they feel like I have to do something just to get out of here. And sometimes it takes years, unfortunately. So I will skip the unhealthy recovery process, sorry. Now, I'd like to show you just quickly in a few minutes the origin of addiction, and I think you will find it interesting, and we'll end this presentation. So in book of Genesis, chapter 3, we read the following. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say, you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, any tree, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. Now, you will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Now, please do bear with me, because this is very interesting stuff. So the fruit, whatever it was, an apple or whatever, the fruit was a composition of chemicals. And the serpent is saying, yes, the God said, you say, that if you eat from it, you will surely die. But I'm telling you, you will not die. Do you know why? Because I've eaten from this tree. And how do you think I, an animal of lower level, can talk to you? Have you thought that way about it? I'm just an animal and I can speak your language. So this is the proof that I've eaten the fruit and my level of my intelligence has increased to the point that I can speak with you now. So what will happen to you if you eat it? You will be like God. You will be like God, like him, himself. And that's why he didn't want you to eat it, because you would be like him. So as you can see, this is the origin of addiction. Because Eve became to believe that something would make her someone better. The chemical substance she was to eat would make her to be like God. So the chemical substance would make her to be someone else. And this is the origin of addiction for me. It's a lie. It's a lie that something could make you to be someone else. So when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some of it and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they made coverings for themselves. And this is the description of addiction. So please allow me to stop there. And I think the time is up. So thank you for listening. And yeah, I will go back to the host. Thank you.